Meeting to order. Please join me for the flag salute. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Glauser?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent? Here. Mayor Long?
Here. Thank you, Sienna. We have a few presentations tonight. Introduction of our new police officer.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'll have the pleasure to introduce our new employee, Thomas McLeod. He started work with us on August 7th, 2019. He attended, he's a graduate of West Valley High School in Cottonwood, California. He attended the 111th CR Academy, graduated in July of 2013, and worked for the Shasta County Marshal from 2013 to 2019. He's married to Alyssa and has one child, Isla, who is 10 months old, and he likes to spend time with his family, ride horses, rodeo, and camping. Let me introduce to you Thomas McLeod, Officer Thomas McLeod. He really doesn't do rodeo. I'm sorry, I had to put that in there.
I just wanted to thank the city for hiring me when my child was born 10 months ago. My wife moved over here for childcare, so I was working in Shasta County while my child was over here. Chief Doverstein brought me in as quick as he could. I applied last year, so my application was on file. My interview was done. I came in for a ride-along approximately 4 months ago, and he got me hired as soon as he could, which was really appreciated to get me back with my family. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Welcome.
And we have an introduction of our new lead maintenance worker.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, Cameron Mall, Parks and Rec Director. So the new lead parks maintenance worker is Jesse Town, and I would say that there is not one person that's more deserving of this position. Jesse Town was born and raised here in Fortuna, attended Fortuna High. In fact, the day after he graduated high school, he started working for the City of Fortuna in the parks, and he has been here for the last 18 years. So Jesse truly is a testament of if you work hard, great things will happen. We're really lucky to have him. He's done a lot of great things over the years. I'm really looking forward to working with him at a higher capacity. He's got his certified playground safety inspection certification, as well as his pesticide applicator certification. And he's just a really great worker, and the city's very lucky to have him. So I wanted to introduce Jesse Town as the new lead parks maintenance worker.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, and city staff. I just want to express my appreciation for the promotion to park maintenance lead worker. I've really enjoyed my employment with the city of Fortuna so far, and I'm looking forward to many more years of serving for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Jesse. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Introduction of our new deputy city engineer.
So I'd like to make that introduction. So Brendan Bird is our new deputy city engineer, and he started on August 5th, and he grew up in the Fortuna area, and he graduated from Fortuna High, went on to get his engineering degree from Humboldt State University, and he's very close to having his PE license and in the near future. Some of Brendan's local knowledge is already... Phone heard me. Brendan's local knowledge is already paying off. He has already demonstrated that he knows some of the local traffic patterns when we were trying to solve a traffic problem the other day. And then he was last a consultant at GHD, and we're really happy to get him. But one of the projects he worked on as project engineer was the Jameson Culvert project, and that's one that was recently funded. So now he'll get to act as project manager on that project. So it's great to have somebody that understands the community and somebody that is looking forward to working here for the long term. So with that, I'll introduce Brendan Bird.
Thank you, Merritt, and thank you everybody for this opportunity. Like Merritt said, I'm from the area, and it's really neat to going to be able to work and to add to the community that, I call home too. So thank you, everyone.
Welcome aboard. Introduction of one more new chief treatment plant operator. Who's doing that one?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Christopher Christensen as our new Chief Plant Operator. Chris started with us on August 5th. He has over 15 years of experience. He lives in Fortuna with his wife and daughter, and we're really looking forward to the great things that are coming forward in our treatment plant with Chris on board. So with that, Chris Christensen.
Thank you. I look forward to making the Fortuna wastewater plant and water system the best it can be and learning as much as I can and helping out the staff, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you for the opportunity.
So welcome to our new employees who are all eager to get on board and make great things happen in Fortuna. Oral comments from the public. If anyone has anything they would like to address the council that is not on the agenda, now is the time. You get 3 minutes, and just please note that we can't take any action on anything that's not on the agenda.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and staff. My name is Sharon Dunio, and I just wanted to introduce myself as a Rancho Buena Vista resident and kind of bring some attention to something that's been happening in our neighborhood, all over our community, and don't have an answer, but want to work to try to find a solution. Basically, on June 5th, I pulled some weeds that were about 6 inches tall, maybe 8 to 10 weeds, and had a needle go through my gloves. I've been dealing with that. Sorry if I get emotional, but it's really hard. June 20th, I was out of town, and my husband found another one. On August 10th, a neighbor texted us at 7:30 in the morning going down the hill. I wasn't sure which way that meant. Didn't get a text back, so my husband went one way, I went the other way. I found what I found, thought he'd be empty. No, I had 10, he had 8. That's how I spent my August 10th. A few days ago, I saw a playground downtown somewhere in somebody's backyard, little Tykes playground or something. My husband said, "What's wrong with this picture?" I couldn't see anything till I looked into his monitor, and I saw 2 syringes fully loaded with something. I don't have kids here, but my next door neighbor's kid was barefoot right by me when I had that happen to me. I don't want to see anybody else go through what I went through. And I know there's a shortage. I know we hired a new officer. That's great news. What are we going to do to retain the ones we have? Do we need to keep losing them to go somewhere else where they're going to make a little bit more money? These people are young. They're going to do what they can for their family. They're going to support their community while they're here, but their family is their priority, just like all of us. What can we do to keep them here? We need to pay them more? I don't know. I did some quick homework. You guys can go online and look, and if you look between Fortuna and Eureka right now, bottom scale Fortuna to the bottom of Eureka. If you add in their hiring bonus that they say online is there at $5,000, there's $16,000 on the table. If you look at the top of our pay scale, the top of their pay scale, and you add in that $5 grand, there's 18 grand on the table roughly. I don't have a finance background, but I can do basic math, and it's just black and white on my computer screen. I'm here in Fortuna. I'm willing to work with anybody that wants to do this. I mean, I took a dustpan and a broom with gloves, knowing that it already went through those exact same kind of gloves from Costco. And I did what I could because I couldn't leave them on the street. They weren't all used, but why were they there? The element is there. We need that element to go away or something. Anything you can do, I'll be here. Just let me know how I could help. I would love to work with others. My neighbors are all here. I'm the only one that's probably going to get up and say anything, but that's okay. They're here to back me up, and I see their faces, and that's what matters. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
That is a very serious problem, and she said it all, but I still
Cece,
ask.
just bring the microphone down.
I still want to ask about the EPT and the pool, because I'm one of them that used it for therapy. And I'm hurting now because we haven't had the pool for a month. Now, the last time I was at a council meeting, you showed $11 million pool, $9 million pool, $7 million pool. Fix the one we have. It costs you maybe a couple $100,000. And charge. We were paying $55 a month, and I was only going 3 days a week for 45 minutes. But I was able to walk with no pain. Now we don't have it anymore, and I'm not going to drive to Eureka. So please do something with that pool for all of us in Fortuna. Don't close it in. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to our next item, which is our consent calendar. We have 9 items consisting of city council minutes and our monthly department reports for administrative, community development, finance, parks and rec, police, public works, river lodge, and a report of disbursements. Does anyone wish to pull anything?
No.
Seeing none,
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second to approve this consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to our city council business. Item A, consider approving the August 19th, 2019 to June 30th, 2022 memorandum of understanding concerning working conditions, wages, and benefits with the Fortuna Police Employees Association. Staff report, please.
So I'll be providing the staff report. Labor negotiations between the City of Fortuna and the Fortuna Police Employees Association are complete. The draft MOU reflects all the changes that were agreed upon by the association and the city. The finance director has confirmed that the adopted budget requires no changes to accommodate the terms of the MOU, and therefore staff is recommending that the council approve the MOU with the FPEA for fiscal years 1920 through 2021 and 2022.
Okay, any questions for Merritt? Seeing none, would anybody from the public like to comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve memorandum of understanding between the city and the FPEA for the fiscal year 2019 through 20 through fiscal year 2021-22.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Councilmember Glauser,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Thank you. Our next item is consider approving the amended full-time pay rate and classification schedule for fiscal year 2019 to 2020, Resolution 2019-19.
Okay, so in the previous item, the terms of the MOU with the FPEA included cost of living adjustments for each fiscal year. The fiscal year includes a 4% cost of living adjustment for the current fiscal year. The second is a 3% cost of living adjustment for the next fiscal year. And the third is a 2% cost of living adjustment for 2021-22. Staff is presenting an amended full-time classification and pay rate schedule that includes the adjustments for these COLAs. Again, the finance director, as with the last item, has confirmed that the adopted budget requires no changes to accommodate this final version of the pay rate schedule for fiscal year 2019-2020. Therefore, staff is recommending that the council approve the amended schedule by adopting resolution 2019-20.
All right, which resolution is it? That one says it's 20. Okay, my thing is wrong right here. Okay.
That's right.
Anyone have any questions for Merritt?
Yeah, we never discussed this.
It just takes into account the 4%, what we just passed for the MOU. It just changed the schedule to agree with the 4% increase for the police department.
I just don't remember any discussion of a cost of living adjustment. We discussed $1, 50 cents, and 25 cents for $1.75 over 3 years. But cost of living, I mean,
That was the FEA. The FEA amounts were $1 in the first year, 50 cents in the next year, and 25 in the third year. But the police, what was agreed on and discussed with council and was presented to the FEA was a percentage. It was a 4%, a 3%, a 2%. And then there was a one-time lump sum payment
All right.
to the records clerk, which
All right.
reflected the amount that they would have to do to not go backwards in their
all right.
salary schedule.
Any other questions? Does anyone from the public have any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
I make a motion, we adopt Resolution 2019-20 and read by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Resolution 2019-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna adopting the amended full-time classification and pay rate schedules for fiscal year 2019-20. Councilmember Glauser?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent?
Yes.
Mayor Long?
Yes. Thank you, Sienna. Our next item is consider amending the Fortuna General Plan by adopting the housing element for 2019 through 2027.
So our Deputy Director of Community Development, Liz Shorey, will be providing the staff report for this item, and she has been the lead for managing this project for the city.
Thank you, Merritt, and Honorable Mayor and council members. So we're pleased to be at this point of updating the housing element for, this is for an 8-year cycle, 2004, what is it, 19 through 2027. So that would get us through 8 years as opposed to the previous, which have been 5-year cycles. So we're happy about that. So I'm just going to really quickly, I know the city did adopt a housing element last year. That was for the previous cycle that has just ended. So, and I know you've had a chance to look at the staff report and the draft housing element. I'm going to give a really pretty quick overview of the housing element. So this is just a kind of graphic demonstrating what is involved in the housing element. This is in really general terms. So the required components under state law is to review and revise the existing housing element, and that is included in our housing element update that's before you, determining what the housing needs of the community are, in particular for all of the income categories and the special needs groups that we'll look at. What are the city's resources, especially the land availability, and then looking at the regulatory framework, governmental constraints, and private market constraints that can inhibit housing affordability, and what programs the city can implement that will make that easier. And then this graphic actually comes from HCD, and you can see that around that framework is public participation. And we did have a workshop in November of 2018, and then we also opened it up when this draft, before the draft was submitted to HCD. We had a public participation through surveys. So we notified housing groups, private market, and we noticed it in the paper and, at the city hall and things like that. So we did have a couple of opportunities for public comment, and those comments actually are included in the draft housing element. So there were some surveys that were responded to. Yeah, Dean?
Liz, how many people actually responded?
It's actually in an appendix. I think there were about 10 around there, 10.
There really wasn't any great response by the public.
No, I think that's probably a reflection that we just updated it a year ago, and we did get maybe double that amount during that review process. And there weren't.
Is it generally the same people that are voicing their approval or disapproval?
The majority of these survey responses were from private citizens.
Right. I would not be surprised that they were the same people that expressed their opinion. But the only way to validate it would be look at the people's names from the prior time and then compare them. But okay, I just wanted to
and also there are not significant changes from the previous, and I can go over what the changes were, but since we just updated it a year ago, it's fairly similar. So, and I'll point out what those are.
So it would be that out of 13,000 people, it was a very small response. It was not something to actually aggressively change what our policies would be.
We didn't get any comments that were, that would kind of trigger, drastic changes. So there weren't any comments other than, we do, confirming that we do need affordable housing. So it's kind of the, general kind of responses. And then all of those, as you can see in the graphic, all of the main component of the housing element, or the product, would be the programs, and I'll go over the programs really quickly. Let's see. So the housing needs assessment starts with the demographics. It's much more detailed in the housing element before you, but those were updated for this particular housing element. So looking at those, the city's economic conditions, the jobs, and the housing numbers. The current population is 12,042, and that's reflects a 0.8% growth rate. So, and that's pretty general over all of the decades. It's always hovered around 1% for Fortuna. And then the special needs groups that have particular emphasis in the housing element that state law requires us to really look at and analyze and provide opportunities for include, and this chart shows the percentage and the numbers for Fortuna. I thought that might be of interest. Persons with disabilities, large households, all of these groups have special needs based on, they tend to have lower incomes and then other issues that create a hardship for housing. So the state law does require that these are addressed somehow in the programs within the housing element. And then housing affordability, of course, is an important issue. And this is based on 2018 affordability, and it shows the, for a 4-person household, the income levels that would be needed to, so the annual, that first line is the annual income for very low, low and moderate income families, and then their monthly incomes, the average monthly incomes, and then the rent that would be needed for affordability, and then the last line is affordability based on their income to purchase a home. And you can see that the last two numbers at the bottom of the slide is the median home price for Fortuna and then the rental price. And if you compare those, both of those are significantly higher than the affordability for very low, low and moderate income households. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to stop me and ask them. The housing resources is the analysis of the city's land inventory, and we start with the regional housing needs allocation, and that is the allocation that the state provides to all of the counties within the state, and then the Humboldt County Association of Governments allocates those to the cities and the county within, for all the jurisdictions within the county. And so each jurisdiction has its share of housing numbers, and that total allocation toward that second to the last column shows the total number. So HCD is basically indicating that the countywide 3,390 units would need to be, that's the demand for the jurisdictions within the next 8 years over that planning period. And then those are allocated between the jurisdictions, and Fortuna's total allocation is 290 housing units. And then that is distributed over the income categories: very low, low, moderate, above moderate. And typically moderate and above moderate jurisdictions usually have that inventory, and the demand or those are the market units that are more available. And the very low and low Of course, those need assistance to meet the lower rents for those income categories. So those are a little bit harder to achieve. But what the RENA numbers requires that we demonstrate that the land is available if a developer wanted to construct those units. So for very low, it's 73 units, and for low, it's 46. And through the housing element process, you'll see that Fortuna does have the inventory to provide those units to meet the requirements of this housing element. So the land inventory is a parcel-specific inventory, and it determines if rezoning or annexation is needed. Again, we do have the inventory that we don't need to do those things. And then we identify the acreage and the number of potential units for that acreage. And this is the map for Fortuna, and all of those highlighted parcels. The yellow parcels indicate the just the standard single-family zoned land for residential low. That's our 6,000 square foot minimum lot size areas. And the over to the right of the map, the pale yellow are the very low density, and the sort of orange is the residential high, so that would be the multifamily, and these are general plan categories. And it's not on the overhead, but in the housing element, all of those areas are identified with the assessor parcel number, and then the acreage and the potential number of units and any other conditions particular to those parcels. So this shows the RENA numbers and then the capacity, and you can see in that far right column that there is a surplus for all of those income groups. So the housing element requires us to identify the housing constraints, and then a lot of the programs that you'll see are kind of geared towards removing the constraints, or at least minimizing them. The non-governmental would be private market, construction costs, land costs, and mortgage financing, so things that are outside of the city's control. And then the governmental building and zoning codes, on-site and off-site improvement standards, fees, other land use controls, and the processing and permitting procedures. And our programs do actually respond to those issues. So the programs, there are 24 of them. They're listed here. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but I did kind of identify generally what they're about. And so they either deal with funding through grants or utilizing the city's housing fund, or they're informational by providing information to the public or conducting outreach or education, at either through various methods, posting information at City Hall or sending out mailers or things like that. And then programs that the city would need to go through to respond to some of those, removing those governmental constraints. And those would typically be zoning amendments and ordinances or updating standards. And I did kind of go through identifying which ones fall under those categories. And if you have any questions, I'm not going to talk about each one. I kind of did that at the Planning Commission, and I think it was maybe more than was really necessary. But if you have any questions, so there's informational programs, and then the actual zoning code types of programs. And you might have questions about those. These are the ones I think that would require obviously the most intensive staff work, going to the Planning Commission with zoning code amendments, and then going to the City Council. So we are turning in the SB2 grant this week with about 6, I think there are 6 of these that are included. So that would be, the SB2 grant is $180,000 that the state is making available. That's the amount, the limit for small cities of our size, and that would provide funds to have a consultant kind of really go through and be able to do the process of public public workshop, public information process to determine, for example, accessory dwelling units, what are the needs of the city, and then going through the planning commission and the council hearings to update those. So that's kind of what we're looking at to get a lot of these done. HCD, through the review of this draft, they have reviewed it, and they're ready to certify it once the council adopts the housing element. And they did want to see some of these implemented within the next year or two. So they're indicating, you know, we've had some of these in our earlier housing elements, and, you know, they haven't been adopted, and they highly encourage us to have them done within the next couple of years. So they'll look at that, you know, in 8 years at the next housing element update process, and want to see those accomplished. I'm not sure what their repercussions by that time. There'll be more housing element laws, stricter laws, you know, if it follows the current trend. So, yeah, we'd like to see those done as well. Does the council have any questions?
Any questions? Jeremy's got questions.
I've got a few questions. So this consultant that will be hired through the SB $2, will they have a workshop with council so we can give some of our feedback?
Yes, all of those,
or-
the scopes for all of those different programs do include workshops before, you know, at the outset, to get, you know, the council's direction, and the public would also be at those workshops.
So like, for example, H1 and H2 and H4 are all kind of tied together with regards to housing rehabilitation, first-time homebuyer programs, and the CDBG Housing Revolving Loan Fund. Those aren't yet implemented, but we could ask our consultant to design something to.
Yeah,
put a
those are
program in
not
place.
included in the SB2, because those are things that actually, what we wanted to do was, the ordinances are actually
So these right here are the SB $2 asks?
pretty much, not all of them. Let's see, the improvement standard update, the residential multifamily development review process, accessory dwelling units, efficiency units, and I think inclusionary zoning. No, not inclusionary zoning. Let's see. Dwelling. Employee housing, that's farm worker housing, and HCD, that's a response to HCD's, basically their request that we update that. I think it's a bigger issue in more intensely agricultural areas, but we do have some agricultural zones. So they want to see that that's a principally permitted use. That should be fairly simple, actually, but it's a code update. Design review guidelines, they want to see standards and possibly an administrative process for design review, just to facilitate housing, and then GIS update layers to identify, to assist developers with identifying available land, what's the infrastructure at those locations, and things like that. So those are the ones that are included. The funding ones are things that I think the city can fairly easily implement ourselves. So those aren't not included in the SB2. We just need to, you know, kind of set aside the time and identify some programs and just,
Just a workshop to kind of develop the parameters of the program and then the underwriting guidelines for somebody to qualify for something like that.
yes. And I think that's something that we can schedule with the council to identify programs for example, we talked about this, the CDBG Housing Revolving Loan Fund. The program calls for, you know, utilizing those funds for housing rehab. And I think that's the one that identified the two parcels in Fortuna, the Penn
The one on
Street and
Spring
the
Street and Penn Street.
Spring and
two
Penn,
city
yeah.
parcels, Spring Street. So Jeremy was asking about those. So it's just something that we've talked about over the years, and it's just a matter of implementation. So
The
these, we
workshops.
basically already have the structure. We just need to kind of create some more specific standards and, you know, loan paperwork and things.
Your what you have is a generic footprint used by all the cities. It's nothing that we've made up. It's just a common listing of categories, and it's our discretion of what we want to do, how we want to attempt to fund or pay attention to that. This has to be adopted by the end of this month, so any kind of workshop is going to be post-adoption and not have an effect on the verbiage of what we have right now.
Yeah, so everything in the housing element is required by state law, all of the analysis, all of the information, the demographics, the land inventory, the arena numbers. The programs are in response to the city's needs based on all of that analysis.
But it very likely is just a slice and dice, paste, put it into the document, and it's used in just about every single city in the state of California.
Yeah, I mean, there's some form of, these are really common ways of implementing
Right, 'cause
housing.
I know full well we don't have any money for first-time home buyers. It's just a listing of what potentially we could address if we were to miraculously have money fall out of the sky.
We have a few $100,000
Yeah.
in the city's set-aside funds, the housing side funds.
There are some monies that do exist currently.
I think that's,
We do have some, I don't know how many years ago, it was 10 or 15, the city went out and got a CDBG grant, and that paid for a bunch of programs. And so as those programs were initiated, part of it was that once the loans were paid back, it would go into a special fund that the city has. And those could be used for either the same type of projects that were initially used by those funds for, or what we have earmarked those funds for this year was for ADA access improvements. So those would be one-time uses of those funds. So once we use those funds, they would go away, and we'd have to go out and get a new grant with new funds to set up these programs that are outlined here.
What about the assets that we currently have outstanding that are loan payments? Is that adding to the CDBG money?
Every time somebody either pays off the loan or we get a payment in, that goes into the CDBG loan fund that we have, and so it accumulates. It's been starting to accumulate less and less as we have less and less loans outstanding, but there's still a little bit of outstanding loans out there.
The CDBG money was to improve the quality of your life. So the improvements that were done to the homes was not just buy a new rug and buy a new plasma TV. It was justified for perhaps roofing or insulation or something that was quality of life. But back to the first-time homebuyers program, we don't have any money in that. We don't have any grant for that. We don't have $200,000-300,000 to be able to give to two people to be able to buy a home that is at $237,000 in average. And until we do, that listing is, like I said, is generic. It's a cut and paste that is used in commonality by anybody who's doing this as a provider of arena submission. And then it's up to us to be lucky enough to get a grant, or, like I said, have somebody hijack a plane and dump $1 million out of the plane, just flies right over Fortuna. So yeah, we're just going through the steps of doing the minimum required by the state to be able to have our report passed by the end of this month. So in other words, tonight we're passing it. We don't do a second reading.
yeah, and I think the state requires these, as a way to make so that each city is responsible for their housing, and also to identify what methods to support affordable housing. So for example, you're talking about, the city doesn't have the funds, that's true, but for example, program H14, housing grants and other forms of assistance, all that does is identify, it says that the city shall pursue funding for housing programs. So, that's a method of obtaining those funds, and it identifies about 10 potential grant sources. So, there's an inventory right there of potential funding, And we've actually been, our senior administrative assistant has gone to these sites recently and signed up for notifications for when that funding is available. So at that point, we can evaluate, is that a program that's going to work for the city? What are the matching funds? Is it appropriate for some kind of development that the city can we find a partner to develop the housing? So, it's true that, our funds are really minimal, but through piecing all of these programs together, it's feasible that something could be created.
And we also might be able to be a pass-through, and we've talked to the county about working with them to expand their first-time home buyers program to the city of Fortuna. And so it wouldn't be that we necessarily have to use program income. There may be other options too. So it may not be just city funds that we have at our disposal or program income funds from CDBG. So that's what the element in the program would be, is identifying those and ways that we could do that. And again, this is, just putting together that program would be something that comes later. We're calling out what the program would be, but we don't have the specifics of it now.
So when I was talking to you earlier, basically, I was just asking you that approving this housing element does not stop the conversation. It actually gives us talking points to keep moving forward in how we address future development.
Right. So for the most part, these programs, just like the housing element is mandatory, but the programs aren't specifically mandatory, except that we identify them. They'll come before the council, especially if they're ordinance or standard updates. And then at that point, the city can evaluate how we want to implement, a design review checklist. It's not that the state is mandating a certain form, as long as we consider it. And even with some of these, if the city decides that that's not appropriate, then we can make findings. And then when we have to report back in 8 years, we can say, well, we did consider this program formally, and this is what, these are the results. Either something got constructed, or we decided it wasn't appropriate, and these are the reasons why. It wasn't going to meet our affordable housing goals. So yeah, in that sense, it is definitely a conversation and a framework for future consideration.
I got one more and then I'm done, okay?
You're good.
All right.
This is why we're here.
We also talked about, before the meeting started, but it's worth mentioning that one of the things that I saw in here was a timeline of events for things happening through the process of development, and one of them was kind of curtailing or streamlining the conditional use permit process and giving you more of an administerial latitude and providing permits over the counter versus through a lengthy 6 to 12 week process. So I'd really like to see that conversation not go away after adoption of this.
Yeah, and actually that is something that, so not everything is mandated by HCD, but they definitely wield a strong influence. And streamlining the review process and considering a administrative conditional use permit process is something that they highly urge us to consider. So that is program number
H9.
H9. In particular, they're concerned about affordable housing, so they want to see the multifamily review process for 5 or more be administrative. So what we could envision is a checklist of standards, and if they meet, say, those 10 standards or whatever, 10 or 15, then it would be administrative. If they wanted exceptions to those, then we could schedule a public hearing. That's a way where we could make it easy on them, but if it's something outside of what the city has considered as appropriate, then they could always do a use permit process. And they've asked that we consider that for design review as well as multifamily to streamline housing. So that's a governmental constraint that, has a solution.
There's so many things that happen right now, this day and age, that I'd like to see that move towards that direction just so we can get projects underway. I mean, 12 weeks in some years is the entire building season. So I just would love to promote development by making us the easiest to work with, so. I'm good.
Any other questions? Does anyone from the public have any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Page 88.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-21 and read by title only.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Resolution 2019-21, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna amending the general plan by adopting the Fortuna housing element. Councilmember Glauser?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent?
Yes.
Mayor Long?
Yes. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Our next item is to consider the acceptance of a dedication of a peace pole sculpture to the city and approve the Monday Club display site.
So Liz Shorey has our staff report for that item as well.
Yeah, so the Fortuna Chamber Public Art Committee has proposed this peace pole sculpture, and they propose it to be located in the front landscaped area of the Monday Club, and that's on the overhead. And you can kind of see the red X there in the middle of that landscaped area, kind of a general location. So it's a 6-foot pole, and this is what it looks like, decorated with a multi-colored flower design, and then the phrase, "Believe there is good in the world." And then here's a bit of a close-up so you can see the flower design. And so the city does have guidelines for soliciting and accepting loans and donations of public art. And in those guidelines, there's a list of criteria. Does it meet the terms of the guidelines? And we've evaluated those guidelines, and yes, it does. They have ability to loan the work for up to 3 years. In this case, the pole is being offered as a permanent donation. What's the cost of installation? There is no cost. Actually, I identified in the staff report that there would be a concrete base, but they have a special attachment where the city won't need to provide the concrete. So, but the city would be able to assist them in installing that with manpower if needed. Does it reflect the goals and objectives of visual enhancement? And I did review the general plan. We have a community design element. It doesn't specifically talk about public art, but it does have a general goal that says to pursue visual and aesthetic enhancements throughout the city and improve the overall quality of the urban environment. So I think we could apply that in this case. I think it's broad enough for public art. And then is it appropriate for its location? And Monday Club is an approved art location. And other than that, I think it would be up to the council to determine if this one is specifically appropriate. It seems to staff that it is. It has also been reviewed by the city curator, which is the city manager. The guidelines designate the city manager as the curator, and he's reviewed this. And he likes it. And then the guidelines just give the city manager, or the curator, directs him to present it to the council for approval. So that's it, and I'll pass that back to the council.
Any questions for Liz?
Yeah. Who's?
Okay.
Wait, Mike's talking.
Who? Pardon?
Hold on, Mike's talking.
Okay, sorry, Mark. David.
When it's first set up, it's going to be, brand new. But over time, it's going to fade and maybe blister and peel. Is there any provision for maintenance or?
In this case, if it's donated, then the city is maintenance, or it just falls on the city. When they're loaned, then it's the owner, the artist's, the donator's responsibility. So it would be the city's responsibility.
Because I know even the old painted wooden seal that was out front, it needed to be taken down and repainted and resealed and then touched up and put back up. I'm not knocking it, I'm just asking a question.
Hi, Erin Dunn, member of the Public Art Committee. I've had one of these peace poles made out of the same material for about 8 years, and there's no fading and no damage. It's kind of a sealed, I'm not even sure what the material is. And I also know someone else who's had someone out in front of their house for longer than I've had it, and there's absolutely no fading or blistering. I mean, it's an amazing material that it's made of. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Dean.
All righty. Are you ready, Merritt? All right. There's 2 people in the audience. There's 14,000 people in this city. Where is the support for this monumental idea to put something in our city that makes a statement, just as the statement in any single liberal city, whether it be in California or the other 50 states, that expresses pacifism, liberalism, conquest of the ideals that a community or a city has. I consider Fortuna being a very conservative city. Maybe perhaps it's the middle of the round, but I consider it conservative. The first city I think of with the 8-foot or 9-foot tall peace pole is Arcata, right in front of City Hall. I thought it was ludicrous when they did it. It's still ludicrous that it's still sitting there. I don't like the statement. None of the art that has ever been promoted and allowed to be standing and on display has any verbiage. It is moot. It is nothing, no words, no nothing. This one is breaking the pattern. This one is making a statement that if you are going to have this, I really don't think anything should be on it. It should be neutral. You want to put color pasties and the rainbows and whatever, that should be the policy, that should be the standard. But right now you're breaking the mold. Number 2, I don't think something like this should be on any city property. If somebody wants it, put it on your yard. Put it someplace where you get to enjoy it. I don't need to be driving down Main Street and seeing it in front of the Monday Club because it's going to tick me off. I don't like this kind of political statement. Now, whether you don't see it that way, I do see it that way. I would like to throw it back into the public's eyes and determination. Is there an election in November? Is anything on the agenda for election, or is it just nothing?
Typically, there's something. I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
I actually just received notification from the county today that they're not having a consolidated election. They didn't have any items.
Okay. I was going to say if there was, I'd say let the public vote on it. That way the 5 of us up here don't make a statement, because this is a personal insult to me. It says the same thing as a mosque being built by the Muslims. They conquered that spot. They made their statement. This peace pole is pacifism. This peace pole is liberalism, and I don't believe in it. Now, if you want to put it at the McLean Foundation on the entrance going in, then that'd be fine and dandy. But on city property,
Hi, my name is Jennifer Brown. I'm the new chairperson for the Art Committee, and this is our second project. The first project was approved by the city. We appreciate it. It was in front of the Chamber of Commerce. It's a dragonfly art. And this is our second project. We're going to have hopefully more of these going on. So it says, "Believe there is good in the world." Peace poles were started after World War II to promote peace. And I believe in front of our Roner Park, there is a dedication for asking for peace from our veterans. So I think it's actually pretty appropriate to have. And so we're just starting up. This is our new project. We're hoping that the second pole and third poles, they're going to be specifically to Fortuna. So we're going to have them vinylly covered so that we can have local artists have their art digitally interpreted into the pole. So this is just a generic first go, and it just says, believe there's good in the world. And I don't really see how that's like too liberal or too crazy or too out there.
I'm not going to rebuttal back to what you said, but I'm going to add some more powder to this. When a group of individuals, an organization, you might as well say a belief, did not like the 10 Commandments on a building, and they illegally challenged it in court, and now they have a statue of Lucifer, all of 10 feet high, standing right there, making their statement. When you put up a peace pole, you automatically open up Pandora's box, or have somebody else of an individual viewpoint that might be the complete opposite, that's going to say, you let that one be done, I demand that mine be put up as well. It could make any kind of horrific, nasty statement, but you cannot deny it. It will be a liability for the city. And I'm just throwing it out there that our obligation as elected officials, whether you want to consider my belief as extreme to the far end of the rainbow, my obligation is protect my city from any kind of libel, loss in court cases. This may be
Hold on.
not.
You guys need to wait until we call you up.
Nice,
You guys, it's not just free reign here.
This needs to be put someplace else. You want to put it in the back where the gazebo is, where people go back when you have Monday Club events? That's fine. That if you want to do that, you've put your art in the back, and people will appreciate it because a lot of people go back there to have wine events and stuff. Okay.
Well,
Hold it.
So I would just say that, you know, when we looked at this proposal, it seemed like a neutral, positive message. It didn't seem like it was a religious message. It's 6 feet tall, so it'll be broken up by the vertical kind of the Monday Club. It's a 6 feet's not very tall, given that the porch is probably 4 to 5 feet tall. So, you know, we didn't see this as something that was controversial. You know, the city staff didn't come up with this proposal. Again, it was the art committee that proposed it, and so we didn't see anything objectionable. Of course, we would have thought about that if it was, you know, some type of activist message or something, but believe there is good in the world seemed like a neutral, positive message. So, you know, as a curator, we didn't take objection to it. It didn't seem like it would be too big and too gaudy or stand out. And again, you know, we like to bring these to the council if there's any question at all. So I would just say that, you know, it's up to the council. If they take exception to this, certainly it's, you know, a 5-member council, and we'd ask that the council decide. But again, it seemed pretty neutral and positive, and I think that was the intention of the art committee.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Liz or Merritt? Seeing none. Would anybody from the committee like to speak again?
Well, I was just going to clarify that it says believe it there is good in the world and not God, just if there was a confusion with that.
All right, anyone else from the public have any comments on this? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Back to the council.
I don't know if I'm completely, I thought, I didn't know there's such a thing as a peace pole. I thought it was a pole. So is there an actual meaning behind a peace pole?
You know, I can't answer the question. I mean, we just took this installation for what it appears to be graphically, you know, and I don't know if there's some other message other than what's written on there, but I think they're intended to convey a message. Maybe we could ask the art committee who proposed it.
Thank you. Diana Rios, Fortuna Business Improvement District, but I'm also a member of the Fortuna Art Committee. So the peace pole idea, where we came up with the idea was, there's currently 3 or 4 in the city of Fortuna right now in people's yards. And as you know, the Otter Project is happening with HSU, where they're painting different otters, and they're going to be displayed in different places. There's the mural project in Eureka, as well as the art boxes. And so we were kind of thinking of what would be something good for the city of Fortuna. What is something different that's not on the same path as the other cities? So we don't want to steal their ideas. And although we do love the murals and we do love what they have going on, but we had talked about possibly creating our own art piece. And so the peace pole project, we thought if we could just start with one peace pole. A few years back, Rotary did, we were going to do a Rotary peace pole in front of the Chamber of Commerce, and that ended up falling through. But it was just a good way just to spread peace and into our communities. There can be some negative things happening, but it was just something refreshing, and we did take out the lift at the Monday Club. I happen to work inside there, so I would get to park in front of it every day, but there's really nothing right there, and so we thought it would be a great location for a peace pole. But then the hope is then that, yeah, community members, local artists, youth in our community could kind of paint a peace pole that would represent something in our community, and then see them pop up in other locations throughout the city in the future. But right now, it's just a simple generic one. They're garden art is how you purchase them, but it's just something nice to go into a greenery. And believe there is good in the world. I have a pen that I wear almost every day. It says, "Believe there is good in the world, be the good." Seems like a good message to convey. So anyway, so when I saw this one, I thought, oh, it's perfect. It matches my pen. So I didn't think anything negative. So anyways, thank you.
Wait a minute, Diana.
So what exactly is peace pole?
That's what I,
So technically, well, like Jen said, after World War II, they created peace poles, and they would put them out in the communities just to help in such a negative time, to just kind of build that joy and peace in communities and in homes. And so, but we call it, peace pole is actually trademarked. So it's a garden art or yard art, or artist pole is what we were calling it. So because the hope is that our artists would get to paint them and hopefully represent some parts of our community, something that maybe that we value, whether it's our rivers or our trees or our depot museums or our gardens, whatever it is that really represents Fortuna, maybe our community events, and then artists would hopefully design them and then put them out. But we, like you guys, don't know what a peace pole is. So if we can start and say, I don't know if you noticed, but there's an art pole in front of the Monday Club, it would be a good leading up to for artists to get some inspiration and ideas. So, and it doesn't have to have words on them. A lot of them don't. These ones did because they're garden art, and so you get a cute saying, and then you stick it in your garden. So that's where that one is.
So is this a peace pole, or is this garden art?
It's garden art, yeah, but it has a peaceful message on there, which is, believe there's good in the world.
So can we change them and call them garden art, garden sculptures or something rather than peace poles?
Sure. Artist pole is, I think, what
Something.
we had originally intended.
Okay, because that's not what our staff report says, so that might change the perception a little bit.
Okay.
If it's considered garden art.
Yeah. No, we don't want to offend anybody. That's not the intent. The intention is to add more art into the community, and they're skinny and they're small and they're not super invasive, and we thought that it would be hard to be offended by it. So, but
All right, anyone have any more questions for the committee?
I'm not offended by it whatsoever. I believe there's good in the world should be a message that everybody should embrace. I'm sorry. There's nothing political about your piece of art.
Instead of a pole, why can't you just do a placard?
How does that change anything?
Wouldn't a flat placard, 4 feet tall and 1 foot wide and a 1/4 inch thick plate steel painted be more appropriate? You'd actually get better detail, and it wouldn't have the symbolism that is Arcata blazing into our face. I can handle a roundabout at some point in time, and folks, I'm saying that, and you can listen to that. I can handle a roundabout, but I can't handle a peace pole.
Okay, well, it's garden art.
You can call it a tree trunk, a power pole, but it would be nicer if it was a flat 1/4 inch steel plate, 1 foot wide and 4 foot high, and you put your color pattern on that. And if you want to do that, there's good in the world, fine. But verbiage, peace pole, everybody's read this on the internet if they're curious, and it has its symbolism. And that symbolism pushed my button.
Anybody else? Okay. Any other comments, Merritt? Nope. Curator?
It sounds like the art committee wouldn't object to it being called an art poll if you wanted to substitute that for peace poll, if that changed things. It seems like a reasonable change.
I'll make a motion to accept a donation of an art pole sculpture, direct the city manager to sign a donation agreement, and approve the Monday Club display site.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, you have a project. All right, our next item is our city manager's report.
Okay, our next council meeting, I'll review our upcoming meeting dates. Our next council meeting is on Tuesday, September 3rd. That'll be a regular city council meeting. Our next planning commission is on August 27th. Our next Measure E committee is on our next Measure E committee meeting is on September 17th, and our next Roner Community Recreation Park District meeting is on September 4th. I have a number of items in my verbal report. The first one was that Congressman Huffman requested a list of projects from HCOG for transformative projects, and so I bundled, and so the HCOG board was to decide and prioritize on those, and so I bundled our two interchange projects, the modernization of 12th Street interchange and the modernization of the Kenmar interchange, into one project, and submitted a request for $33 million and made a presentation to the HCOG board. So, although these type of projects, there's a number of other projects presented by or proposed by almost every other community, and I think 4 or 5 by the county. So it's hard to say what'll happen, but we made a strong case for why improving those interchanges would allow for the city connect to the river, to allow the city to build out to its planned growth without being limited by traffic impacts. So we're hopeful. We'll keep our fingers crossed. I think it's a remote chance that we would see funding, but we think it's a great project. And I was encouraged by some of the members of the HCOG board who actually spoke in favor and ranked that pretty highly as a top project. Ultimately, no ranking came out, and it was a list of projects, but they agreed to put the city's project at the top of the list, even though there wasn't an official ranking. So I want to get more visibility for those projects, because I think in the long term, it's one of the most profound things we could do to allow for the future growth of the city and connection to the river. And another big part of it is that it would allow for the development of the mill district without a massive interchange project to mitigate traffic impacts for growth of the mill site. So that was an important effort that made last Thursday. I did also review a conditional use permit for 280 12th Street. So the buyer, Kevin Bradley, who's made an offer to the city and we're in escrow to sell to him, he submitted a conditional use permit, and we were very pleased at a number of things that you would include, including landscaping, sidewalks, and improvements to the building, aesthetic improvements. So that'll be going to the next planning commission meeting for conditional use permit consideration. Then ultimately the zoning amendment and the general plan amendment and the zoning change would be brought to the city council. So I think that'll be at the next city council meeting that we'll see that. The Hillside Creek Flood Control Project is going well. You may have noticed that they switched traffic over from the southbound lane to the northbound lane. It took us a little bit while longer on some of the private property between CAL FIRE and the Strong's Family Trust property immediately to the north, but we're happy to be off that, and we have traffic back onto that side. And we expect within 3 weeks to be hopefully in less than 3 weeks, we'll be off of Fortuna Boulevard and moving to where we won't be impacting traffic. So we really appreciate the patience from all of the businesses that are impacted by that. And it's, a necessary project, and it's moving along on schedule. As is the 12th Street Fish Passage project. If you happen to be walking down 12th Street and you can look downstream, or to the westerly direction, you'll see that they're installing grade control weirs, and I believe they poured most of the concrete in the weirs for that. So it's moving along on schedule. As is the 12th Street undergrounding project. You may have noticed that they didn't work and have traffic control today, which was a nice change, but the contractor had a union meeting, I believe, out of town, but the contractor installing the conduits is expected to be completed in October, and then we'll see another contractor come in. Again, they're working for PG&E. They'll begin pulling the conductors and the wire for PG&E, and then they'll also have another contractor coming in doing restoration of the pavement and doing the flat work, and so we expect that to happen in the coming months as well. It will be a long time before the poles are removed. AT&T and Suddenlink will need a little bit more time to relocate their facilities, and so it may be a little bit of time that the pole's there, but the power lines will be off and just communication lines will remain. And then I just wanted to recognize our finance department. They've been putting a tremendous effort in to convert over to our new software, and it might sound like a pretty simple thing. You just get some new software and enter things, but they are going through trainings. They're having to provide data. They're doing test runs and test billings. They're getting new equipment to stuff envelopes, and all that on top of making sure that people are getting their paychecks and our vendors are being paid. So in our normal budget process, but it's a huge effort, and they should be commended for doing that. It's something Aaron might be able to tell you. I think it's been over 30 years since we've been on the same finance software, so I don't know if you want to say anything else there,
Longer
Aaron.
than Aaron's
It's
been
archaic, and we have something that, the new software is going to create a lot of efficiencies, and they're going to provide opportunities for us, even just having an envelope stuffer for 8.5 by 11 pages instead of cards will give us some good opportunity for outreach to all of our customers in the city. So, and we'll have better ways to track our budgets in real time, and there's going to be a lot of functionality with that. And I'd also like to say that our city clerk has also been working diligently. You probably saw in her staff report on the update to the city website. That's going to be another thing that'll give the city a new face and really have a nice appearance and allow for, easier use of forms and elimination of cross-references. Our website was out of date. It's a process to bring these kind of improvements along, but we are diligently working on them, and both those, we should see some movement in the near future, and customers will expect improved service through the software and updated website. Hops and Humboldt this weekend. I don't have much to say about that. I just wanted to make sure the reminder got out there. I think Mayor Pro Tem Trent may have a word or two to say about that. Some other good news. We received a grant from the Wildlife Conservation Board for $998,000 for the replacement of Jameson Creek culvert to create a wildlife corridor and to provide for fish passage. If you remember, I think it was a couple months ago, we were awarded a $1.7 million grant from California Department of Fish and Wildlife for the same culvert. So this is the remaining, that $998,000 will give us the remaining funding that we need to complete that project. It's an old culvert that presents a liability to the city. We've had some failures there in the past, but not only will we be able to replace that with this grant funding, but we'll be able to allow for passage for aquatic life to go through and fish. So pretty excited about that, and that's the one project our new deputy city engineer, he worked on as a design engineer, so now he'll get to be the project manager. I also had a meeting with the McLean Foundation. They are interested in pursuing a CDBG grant for a building to build a building for Reaching for Independence. So I had a meeting with them and Paula Mushrush from the county. The city is contracted with the county to help us, to assist us with CDBG grant applications. And in meeting with Paula, she thought that project would qualify for CDBG. So we'll be waiting for the next notice of funding availability and bringing something in front of the council so the council consider whether or not they want to be the applicant on behalf of the McLean Foundation or Reaching for Independence. So there's a lot more details to figure out. We don't have the specific funding notice out there yet, but it's something that we are looking forward to working with the McLean Foundation on and Reaching for Independence. And that's all I have for my staff report.
So I have a question on the website. Once we get a new website going, are we going to have somebody that's going to keep it updated?
Yes, and Sienna could probably give you more details. She'll be putting things on there and making sure those links are updated, and it'll be nice because we'll have an overall scrub, and I think, Sienna could tell you more about the contracting with the company and how we make changes, but there'll also be an opportunity for, the mayor and council members to have some unique characteristics for their page and help with the creation of that too.
Yeah, so right now we're working on migrating the content. It's really still part of the initial design phase, but it's basically taking what exists on the current website, migrating it to the new platform, and then we're going to go through a series of trainings. I'm hoping before we reach the training point that I can coordinate with Revise to have somebody give a presentation so everybody can see kind of where it's at visually, and then we're going to kind of get into the details. Like Merritt was saying, we'll try to meet with the department heads. We'll meet with the council, to try to get an idea of what you want specifically in terms of access and just, availability, not transparency, I guess accessibility for the public. So it's still going to be a process, but I need to see what the migration looks like before we can really move to the next step. Okay. Hopefully a presentation in the next couple of council meetings.
thank you.
Do you have any idea about our iPads? How are the updates going on those?
I do. I'm hesitant because it's going to bring some changes that I know that not everybody is going to be super thrilled. So Nilex worked to set up a management system, and your iPads were working kind of like a family unit. So the idea that we had one account, the way Apple works, you have several devices, it kind of thinks a parent is in charge of all of the devices that live in the account. So that was the reason why your devices could talk to each other, and why if one person downloaded something, then oftentimes you could see it on another iPad and notes were shared. And so to change that, we had to move it into a professional management system. But part of that professional management system is going to limit some of the applications that you had access to before. So it means you're going to have internet, and you're going to have Word, and you're going to have all of the basic applications that you would, your email, your Outlook if you want it, but some of the more personalized components are not going to be accessible. And so I'm going to have to work with you. If you had your iPad for a while, I'm going to have to work with those council members that have maybe pictures or notes or documents that they have stored that they want to download onto a thumb drive and save it off of the city iPad. So I've been kind of hesitant to implement that. I wanted to give you all a chance to get any content off the iPads that you currently have, save it, and then we'll move over to this new management system that will have a little bit more of a limited aspect.
So will we lose all of our past city council packets?
Not necessarily. Just need to know what specifically you're talking about. If they're packets that you've made notes on and saved as a different item, if you're, I'm not sure if you're talking about the
Just the downloaded ones that we
like the drop boxes that we make accessible. We'll still have Dropbox feature, so all of those will be accessible the same way. It's really any specific content. So if you saved documents, pictures, downloaded applications, games, anything of that nature that's on the iPads, those things will have to be taken off, and then the new program management system won't allow for some of those things to be used any longer.
So I'm going to lose all my wastewater documents that were downloaded on somebody's iPad?
Well, if you wanted the
kidding.
We will be able to work with our IT department to get whatever you need off of the input on
It
there.
just appeared on mine. I don't really know what they mean. I just have wastewater papers on my iPad.
We'll work together to save anything that you would want to save from your current iPad.
I don't really need it.
I save mine all the time. There's 3 of us up here that are actually 2 of us that are old school. I like old school.
I got both.
Okay, you're done this?
All right, thank you, Merritt. Future agenda items, anything? I think we've got a lot of things on our plate already. You guys have been doing good keeping things coming to the council. City council reports, Dean.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This Thursday at 3:30, I will be attending Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting. I was going to make a mention about Fortuna Boulevard project. It only seemed like they went about 20 feet in a week. You thought they would just probably hyperdrive to get to the trench. How far up past the veterinarian trench, are they going to go further up and get into that trench and go past Les Schwab?
Culvert will go all the way to the edge of the existing roadway, and then they're going to be going all the way up to digging and widening the creek all the way up to Ronerville Road.
All right. Awesome. God bless America. God bless our troops. May you be safe wherever you are. You are in my heart, and I know in millions of other hearts to be serving and protecting our liberty. Thank you very much.
That was a record. Mike.
Shock and awe.
Okay, well, mine's going to be a little bit longer, but.
You could have my time.
Oh, perfect. All right. As a member of the rodeo commission, or rodeo board, had a rodeo meeting, and they were very appreciative of all the work that the city staff did, Public Works, Parks, Police, everybody. I mean, it was great. Things went really well. And I just wanted to convey that message. And I believe they sent a letter to.
They sent a very nice letter.
Yeah. So moving on from that, Merritt mentioned HCOG in the list of projects, and that there was a little discussion on there, but it was, our project was very well supported, and it's moving along to the next stage. And it, while there's no numerical order to it, it is at the top of the list. And hope to see some, if nothing else, bring awareness to the need, because we do have a landlocked, for lack of a better way, when you think about it, landlocked piece of ground that's developable. It's a hole in the city, and it needs some infrastructure work to move ahead, and it's a block. So the Kenmar and 12th Street interchange project moved ahead. Part of the other things that were done were the city's LTF claim, as well as I think it was the county's. And then RSTP funds, Regional Surface Transportation Program funds, were distributed at that meeting also. A historical commission meeting coming up in September. And then there's, as a member of the Auto Expo committee also, I'll be going to a Auto Expo wrap-up meeting tomorrow night. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Jeremy?
I'd like to thank Merritt for taking the time to give me a tour of the Hillside Creeks project and the 12th Street Fish Passage project. It was very enlightening to go down there in the trenches, literally, and see all the progress that's being made. And it's a lot of disruption all at once, but I think that if we can endure this, it's really going to turn into something we can all really appreciate long term. So appreciate the public's patience with all the many projects going on. Movies in the Park was a great success for its initial inaugural viewing. They showed the fantastic Mr. Fox on their 21-inch or 21-foot inflatable movie screen, and it was really neat to see all the families that came out and participate. Would like to invite the public out to our next Movies in the Park night, starting at 8:30 on August the 30th. The two movies that are being suggested are The Sandlot and Night at the Museum. So today, tomorrow, and I believe ending on Wednesday, you can go to the Park and Rec's Facebook page to vote on which one you'd like to see at Movies in the Park. Had about 70, maybe as many as 70 participants that took part, and it's a free event for families and the public. The one thing that we do offer is nonprofit organizations to offer concessions out of the Cook Shack. So we provide the Cook Shack free of charge for them to make a few dollars for their nonprofit organizations. The last one was fast pitch softball, and they offered, popcorn, sodas, waters, candy, nachos, things like that. So it was a great little turnout for our first one. Come down, bring a blanket and a chair, get comfortable, and if you have a choice or a preference on movie, please vote. Right now, I understand that The Sandlot is ahead in the polling, so kind of a good little nostalgic movie.
That's what I voted for.
Huh?
That's what I voted for.
You voted? All right. So moving on, I'd say that I had an opportunity to do a ride-along with Fortuna Police Department. It was very informative. They are a hard-working group. I did the night, Saturday night? Saturday? I don't know. I got there at 7:30 and left at 3:45 a.m. It was cool. But really good attitudes in dealing with the public, very respectful when they're making stops and talking to people. They have their stern voice on, but they're a very, very respectful group of people, and I really learned a lot, and I appreciate their willingness to bring me along on that. My last FBID meeting was canceled, and once again, I'd like to invite the public of anyone that's in business or management of a business to come forward to submit your application for an FBID board position. The council has an opportunity to appoint somebody to that board, and if you have any interest, please contact the city clerk or the FBID office for that application. And I think it's a worthwhile group. I've done a lot of soul searching and revamping and kind of recharging their batteries and the way they're going to conduct themselves moving forward, including board members in site visits to businesses so that businesses can voice some of their wants, needs, and desires to the FBID board so they can be as impactful as possible. The last thing I did, which wasn't necessarily city related, but still a very interesting conversation going on in Humboldt County, was I attended 2 days of the California Coastal Commission at the Wharfinger. They come up here very seldom, and it was an enlightening 2 days. I couldn't stay the whole time. Man, those guys are marathon meeting holders. I think it started at 9 and ended at 5:30 p.m. on the first day, or it was 11 to 5:30, and the next day I think it was 9 to 4 something. And our meetings are short in comparison. But some of the stuff they talked about, there was a presentation regarding sea level rise that was very informative, enlightening, and impactful to the commission. Humboldt County, if you can believe this, in the entire West Coast, we are actually, according to the data that was presented, impacted by sea level rise more than anywhere else on the West Coast. We're not rising, the sea's not rising higher than it is in Crescent City, but we're having a subjection issue where we're actually sinking a little bit while sea level rises, and so we're going to be impacted in the next 50 years or so. So the county is having workshops to discuss how the public would like to see them address that issue, and whether they do managed retreat and move out of those areas, or whether they enforce and improve dikes and levees. So those are all conversations that I would encourage the public to pay attention to moving forward. It's not a done conversation by any means. So I know not necessarily Fortuna business, but it impacts a lot of our local area. So it's important to be in those conversations. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Jeremy. Tammy.
Okay, I just was going to add a little bit to your ride-along. It's also, if you've never sat in dispatch, that's another place to actually go sit in with the dispatchers and see how hard their job is and what they do. That is pretty interesting I don't know if our dispatch has the capability of putting headphones on and hearing both sides of 911s and that kind of stuff, but when I got to sit in dispatch, I got to see everything that they did, and that was pretty interesting, as well as the ride-along. A question, is 12th Street done now, the road? So are they going to be able to pave it pretty soon, or do they have to still do more digging?
They are getting close. They still have more conduits to put in, and then they're going to come back and patch their trenches, and they have a lot of flat work to do. But once they are done in October of installing conduits, then we can do what we want with the roadway, and their work will be completed. So all the utilities will have the ability to go underground, and they can install them through the boxes for the communication companies that come later. So yes, we could redo and pave the road at that point.
So it's going to be done just in time for winter when we can't pave.
Right. But we don't have a project program for paving 12th Street right now, so that's one that we're going to have to look at as we do the next year's CIP. And I know it's one we want to do, but paving's expensive, and it's one of those things that we don't have a lot of funding for.
Okay.
Bumps will slow everybody down, that's good. Speed control.
Mayor Long and I attended the Redwood Empire meeting down in Point Arena. I've always heard about Point Arena, never had planned a vacation there or anything, but it's kind of out of civilization. There was no cell service. I felt kind of a little lost there. Nobody knew where I was or how to get a hold of me. But it's a very pretty area. The lighthouse down there is very pretty. There was whales out in the water. We had a couple of really good presentations. I'm going to let Mayor Long talk a little bit about that, but we did talk about sea level rise. We talked about the purple urchin. Another study that they are doing down there, they have a Mendo College, what is that?
Field training
office or something. So I kind of got a little laugh out of this our project that they were doing, or survey they were doing. They have 2 patches of grass on different sides of the field marked off and they were studying the grass growth between the ones that the cows walk on and the ones the cows don't walk on. I don't really understand that one, but it was interesting.
She couldn't get over that till weekend.
No, I couldn't. I just thought, I think there's better ways to spend money, but oh well. And I'll let Mayor Long finish on that, but that was a really good meeting. We talked about a lot of really good stuff, including SB2. That was on our agenda to talk about too. Hops is this weekend. It's a very good fundraiser. All of the profits go back into the community through grants. We've done a lot of good grants, so it's a really good way to get money into the community. You don't have to drink to go to Hops. You can get a DD ticket, designated driver, which is only $10. You can go in. There's a lot of food vendors in there. There's a lot of regular vendors in there if you just want to walk around and see what the event is like. The VIP tickets are all sold out. We do have general admission tickets still available. So I encourage anybody that wants to go, come visit. It's a fun event. If you are going to drink, please bring a driver. And let me see.
Can I interject? A quick thank you to Hops. They gave the largest single donation that they've ever given for the movies in the park. So that's a direct public benefit to the work that they do. So sorry, steal the
You're okay.
The disadvantage of being the mayor and having your report last is everybody
You just can cross things off as you're going. It's okay.
Yes. We have given some really good grants. That was one of them. We granted the bulletproof vest for the canine dog. We granted a training suit for the sheriff's canine dog. We give scholarships to high school students or undergrads. So there's a lot of youth groups. We have given a grant every year for the senior bus to take the seniors out to watch the lighted truck parade and then drive them around town so they can see the Christmas lights. Without that, they would never get to see that kind of stuff. So there's just lots of nice little things and big things that they do. And that's all I have to report.
I was going to say the difference between the one that gets walked on and the one that doesn't is fertilizer.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
But do they want it without fertilizer or with fertilizer?
I'm not going to eat it, so it's okay.
So as soon as the Hops event is over on Saturday night, shortly after that, there will be a link on the webpage for you to submit your grant request. So we have about 5 categories: seniors, youth, civic, schools, drug and alcohol, prevention and awareness. I think I'm missing one. Anyway, so if you fall into any of those categories, check out our website and submit a grant. It's always fun to go through all of those at the end of the year and give money away. Point Arena did a great job hosting. It would have been nice to know we were not going to have any cell service, so we could have done the old-fashioned thing of writing down the hotel that we were staying in and phone numbers and all that, because nothing went wrong, thank goodness, because no one had any idea how to get a hold of us. But it wasn't that bad, and it was an absolutely beautiful day. It was like 75 degrees. It was supposed to be like 62. It was gorgeous. We went into dinner after we did all their tours, including a lighthouse. We got to walk all the way up to the top. Some people are afraid of heights and didn't go.
Yeah.
Learned all about lighthouses and how their signals work, and the guy who did it was totally a lighthouse, nut, history buff, and he had all kinds of really interesting things to tell us about. And so that was really fun. For a tiny little town, they did a great job. We went into dinner and visited and did all that networking, and we came out and the ground was wet, and we were like, what is going on? And it was pouring down rain. So we had no network, we had no Facebook, we had nothing. So Tammy and I put our chairs in front of our little French doors and watched the thunder, listened to the thunder, watched the lightning, watched the rain, and just chatted, and it was actually just really nice.
And somebody says there's a beach down there. You want to walk down there? I'm thinking, in the thunder?
She wouldn't go. She wouldn't go.
I wouldn't go.
I'm obviously more adventurous, that's all I can say. The River Lodge, Hops, and Went Construction hosted a chamber mixer last Wednesday. It was really fun. We had over 100 attendees, and Joanna rocks. She did food and decorations and just worked her little heart out. And we just are really thankful for her every year. She helps really pull that together, and it was just a fun event. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It was nice to sit through the presentation for the SB2 from the Institute of IG, what is? Yes, yes. Anyway, the lady did a really good presentation, and it was really nice to sit there knowing that we were already on board with that, and you guys were already taking care of it, so that was kind of fun. We got to tell her at dinner that our city was up there and ready to turn ours in really soon. I think that's the fair's going on. We'll be at the junior livestock auction buying animals on Sunday with a lot of other businesses. It's a really good way to reward kids for all their hard work, and I've got a whole stack of letters in my office already from kids coming in and giving their little presentations, and some of them bribe us and bring us treats, and Ron goes, you need to write down on there who brought us treats. So just if you're listening out there, you get brownie points if you brought us treats. So,
Intended.
huh?
No pun intended.
No. Yeah. We did have a closed session item tonight for negotiating the real property at 2600 Newburgh Road, but we have nothing to update, so we are going to cancel that. So at this time, we are finished with all of our meetings items, and we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.